Hi, I chose The Outsiders to do my analysis on. The author of The Outsiders, S.E. Hinton, was born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She began writing it when she was a sophomore at Will Rogers High School. She had a greaser friend who had been jumped by Socias and beaten pretty badly. It made her mad and motivated her to begin writing about it, but at the time she began writing, she had no thoughts of publication. The Outsiders was published in 1967 by Viking when Miss Hinton was a senior. At the suggestion of her editor, Susie published using her initials in order to deflect attention from her gender. Susie went on to write titles such as That Was Then, This Is Now, Rumblefish, and Tex, in addition to 5 other books before retiring in 2008. S.E. Hinton received the inaugural Margaret A. Edwards Award in 1988 for her cumulative contribution in writing for teens. For The Outsiders, Miss Hinton earned a spot on the New York Herald Tribune Best Teenage Books list and won the ALA Best Young Adult Books Award, in addition to 3 other awards. In 1965, the U.S. had committed ground troops in Vietnam, and any male graduating between 1965 and 1971 that couldn't prove a disqualifying medical condition or get a college deferment was going into the military and shipping out to Vietnam. Military service was not optional. The author's perspective could have been affected by this because class differences, for example, financial ability, come to the forefront when those that could afford to go to college, in other words, Socias, were getting deferments, while those who could not afford college, in other words, the greasers, were being sent to Vietnam. Miss Hinton was a tomboy, and many of her guy friends were greasers, but she had Soc friends too. This is the perfect view to see how both groups were handling their Vietnam decisions. There was a great deal of, it's my patriotic duty to serve my country, and hell no, I won't go, that divided states, entire cities, neighborhoods, families, and friends. These are all things that could have had a profound effect on the author's perspectives. At about 180 pages, The Outsiders is a pretty quick and easy read for an average 7th grade reader, but the smoking, drinking, and violence in this book may cause a parent to want their reader to wait until 8th grade or later. The Outsiders is originally set in the 1960s. This novel is about the conflict between and unique inner struggles of the greasers, the 3 Curtis brothers, Derry, Soda Pop, and Pony Boy, Dally, Winston, Johnny Cade, Keith Tubit Matthews, Steve Randall, described as hoods who steal, hold up gas stations, drive old souped-up cars, and have less money than the middle class. And the Socias, Bob Sheldon, Randy Adderson, Sherry Cherry Valance, and Marcia, described as nice kids who jump greasers, wreck houses, throw beer blasts for kicks, and have more money than the middle class. A summary of The Outsiders is this. 3 greasers meet 2 Soc girls at the drive-in. 2 Soc boyfriends of the girls are angered. They jump to the 2 greasers and are drowning one. The other greaser gets scared and stabs one of the Socias to death. While hiding out in an old abandoned church in another town, the church catches fire, small children are trapped, and the 2 greasers save them. However, one greaser's back is broken by a burning beam during the rescue. He is hospitalized and dies. This event sends a 3rd greaser berserk, and he robs a grocery store. He is shot and killed by the police. One of the Curtis brothers blacks out, is delirious for a couple days, and is placed on doctor-ordered bed rest for a week. During this week, the friend of the dead Soc visits him, and they have a new understanding of each other's situations with regard to punishment for the stabbing incident, and also for one another's positions in life. While recuperating, 2 of the Curtis brothers have an argument that upsets the 3rd one in an uncharacteristic way, and the 3rd one finally tells the other 2 that he hates when they fight and argue and put him in the middle because he loves them both. They realize they've been unfair to him and that he has problems just like they do. A letter is found inside a copy of a book that the 2 greasers who were hiding out read together during their time at the church. It is from the greaser who died after the church rescue. He lists some good things in the world, for example, saving those kids and the sunsets Ponyboy watches, and asks Ponyboy to please share them with Dally because he doesn't think Dally even knows there is still good in the world. Unfortunately, Dally is already dead. The Outsiders closes with Ponyboy's thoughts about a paper he had to write in order to recover a decent grade in his English class. The book ends with the same line it began with. When I stepped out into the bright sunlight from the darkness of the movie house, I had two things on my mind: Paul Newman and a ride home. I enjoyed my first read of The Outsiders in the late 80s and enjoyed the recent reread as well. It is easy to get so engrossed in this book that the reader feels like they've literally stepped into it. I think it's because it is so easy to see oneself in the characters and their situations. When I was a teen, I recall feeling like this book understood the issues teens wanted to read about, like relationships, drinking, smoking, friendships, and belonging. I identify with S.E. Hinton in that I was also born without the need to belong gene. I had friends in many groups. I was a soc and a greaser. My friends were brainiacs, jocks, cheerleaders, geeks, and stoners too. I can't say that I strongly identify with one specific character. I identify with Derry as he is practical and pragmatic. I am Soda Pop in that I am an optimist and a good listener. I am sometimes a dreamer like Ponyboy and Cherry, and even a joker like Two-Bit. Unlike Dally, who has a short fuse and has been hardened by life experiences, I have been similar in his no-holds-barred way of operating. I can become wild, unhinged, and ready for extreme measures when all else has failed. A question that remains unresolved for me is whether more vulgar, stronger language was used in the 80s version of The Outsiders as I recall it. For example, I can't imagine that Dallas Winston ever would have said, "Oh glory," or "Glory hallelujah," and still had Gen Xers identify with him the way I remember we did. Then again, I have to remember that the original version was written in 1967, and that may have been verbiage their hoods like Dally would have used. A comment that jumped out at me was the mention of the tricolon in The Outsiders. I don't really think it's written tricolon in that there are not actual repeating lists of three in the text, but tricolonic imagery is present. For example, 3 Curtis brothers, 3 rings on Bob's hand, 3 deaths, Bob, Johnny, and Dally. The Outsiders has gotten 1.3 million ratings at Goodreads, and 75% of those ratings are 4- and 5-star ratings. On October 5th, 2023, Lisa of Troy stated, "Golly is mentioned 8 times in The Outsiders, and it isn't even that long of a book." I wonder if Oh Glory was also in her copy. Common Sense Media rates The Outsiders a 4 out of 5 stars, and it earns 5 out of 5 for positive messages and 2 out of 5 for educational value. 33 parents at Common Sense Media give it a 4 out of 5 stars. However, 286 kids at Common Sense Media rate The Outsiders 5 out of 5 stars. In May of 2023, SLJ reported that this novel is included on their 2022 Refreshing the Canon list. Maggie Zafert on December 7th, 2023, gave The Outsiders a 1 out of 5 on Amazon and said, having the original publication date in the title of the listing made it appear that this was a first edition, when in fact it is the 87th printing. Extremely unhappy, as I bought this specifically because I thought it was a first edition. I cannot disagree with Maggie regarding the confusion created by all the different copyrights. Amazon reviews gave The Outsiders 4.7 out of 5. Although the book doesn't mention a specific town, and the movie that was made from the book was filmed in the author's hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma, the setting could have been Manytown, USA, because there were greaser and soc families all across the USA, which is one of the reasons the book resonated and continues to resonate with so many people. This novel challenges the reader's preconceived notions about social economic class and what criteria defines a hood or bad person. S.E. Hinton's intended audience is the teenage demographic. She felt that there were not enough books created by teens, for teens, and about teens, handling the subject matter in the right way. She certainly accomplished her purpose, as she was a teen author. The Outsiders is about teens, and it addressed teen issues, like the need to belong, smoking, relationship, and friendships, in a more realistic way than previous books. This was considered a fresh perspective at the time this book was originally published. Hema at The Guardian hit the nail on the head when they described one of the main themes that is so relatable to youth this way: the struggle to figure out who you are within the restrictions set by society, friends, peers, and family. This idea and the idea that society creates class and other divisions amongst ourselves, yet we are also the ones who can challenge them, are the main themes in The Outsiders. Hinton does an excellent job providing physical descriptions of all of the greasers in the first 10 pages of the book, but hints at a possible author bias when there are not a lot of the same type descriptions for any of the socias. I see the most dynamic characters as Ponyboy, Randy, and maybe Johnny. Both Pony's and Randy's growth is demonstrated in their talks with one another, first in the car before the big rumble, then again when Randy visits Pony at home. That they can each identify with, or maybe even empathize with, each other regarding their different positions in life is a marker of growth. Growth for Johnny was demonstrated posthumously in the letter to Ponyboy that dropped out of the copy of Gone with the Wind, in that he understood the green and gold references from the Robert Frost poem and recognizes that Dally has seen so much negative in the world that he is unable or unwilling to see the positive when it is truly present. Two different social classes were diversely represented in The Outsiders, but not much other diversity was represented. Whites are represented, there are no blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, nor Asians represented. There is no LGBTQ representation either. Genders are not mentioned in the character descriptions, but pronouns in the text indicate that all of the characters besides Cherry and Marcia are male. Stereotypes or tropes that can be found in The Outsiders are Dally's brown leather jacket, white t-shirts worn by the greasers, and cigarettes associated with the greasers. These are stereotypes or tropes indicative of the greaser lifestyle or position in life. In the alternative, the blue Mustang, the red Corvair, the rings on Bob's hand, are indicative of the social lifestyle. Hinton uses foreshadowing in the book. On page 52, after Ponyboy ran out of the house because Derry slapped him for being late, Ponyboy says, "Things gotta get better, I figured. They couldn't get worse. I was wrong." Foreshadowing of the church fire can be found on page 67, but this church gave me a kind of creepy feeling. What do you call it? Premonition? One might use this book in a library setting as a great example of various teen behaviors, SEL, that can happen due to psychosocial factors or to address how best to handle some teen situations. I would recommend this book for selection or retention because 80 to 90% of teen students really connect with the characters and topics of belonging and negotiating a teen's way through society and its norms, friendships, peer pressure, and social economic differences. I can make this book more accessible to students by placing it on my 5 out of 5 slat wall cube book display or by creating a shelf talker. I lean toward not labeling books in my library for two main reasons. I am a library department of one in my district, and labeling is time-consuming, and because it just opens a Pandora's box. If I begin labeling for language, then it could snowball into labeling for sexual content, teen pregnancy, drugs, and on and on. And then I have to decide whether to label if only the word damn is in the book. Would I then have to thumb through every book looking for these words? In 1967, when this book was published, it could have been considered both a Windows and a Mirrors book because if the reader identified with greasers, they could see into their own struggles and world, and if the reader identified with socias, they could see into the struggles and world of greasers, and vice versa. Other than some readers having difficulty identifying with the characters, The Outsiders could also be a Windows and a Mirrors book today, as the same economic differences exist today. Only the empathic conversations between Pony and Cherry, and also Pony and Randy, might qualify this book as a sliding glass door book. The Outsiders is appropriate for the intended audience, age 13 to age 18. Erickson's fifth psychosocial stage, adolescence, says the basic conflict is identity versus role confusion, which builds the virtue of fidelity by searching for a sense of self and personal identity through an intense exploration of personal values, beliefs, and goals. The individual wants to belong to society and fit in. It can be confusing, though, when teens, first, are new to recognizing that there are different categories of society, and second, that there are certain unique pressures and struggles involved with belonging to each category. The Outsiders aligns with Erickson's Stages in that it explores the Sociers and Greasers. The author clearly defines in the first few pages what a greaser is and what a soc is. The conversations between Ponyboy, a greaser, and Randy, a soc, help to clarify their unique struggles. For example, Ponyboy's dead parents and precarious position regarding a boys' home placement, and Randy's guilt for disappointing his father. The conversations between Ponyboy and Cherry help clarify the similarities between greasers and socs. For example, their discussion where Cherry says things are rough all over, indicating it's not as rosy being a soc as many people think, and another about sharing the same sunsets. Thank you.